Now, I hear all the time you're never going to make a living selling those sorts of items. I hear it constantly. And every time I hear that, I think the same thing. They're missing the biggest picture about this and why this works. Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to talk about selling items, specific items. I hear it all the time. Now, I'm constantly told when I'm talking about specific types of items that you can't make a living doing that you're just not going to make any money selling those sorts of things. And I don't care what it is. I hear it for pretty much everything that we do. The big picture here, though, it doesn't matter if I make a living off of, say, selling 45 records here or selling 78 records like this Elvis one here as well. I don't have to make a living selling the 78 records. I don't have to make a living selling 45 records. I make a living by selling multiple items in many of each of those items. To make a living selling records, you're not just going to sell one type of record. You're going to sell pretty much any type of record you can get your hands on. If I'm out sourcing and I'm going to be looking for records, I'm going to run into bunches of them, and it's usually a mixed lot, 45, 78s, LPs, whatever the case may be. So you're going to run into a whole bunch of things. There are, though, people that make a living just selling expensive 78s. That's all they make a living selling, and they have a massive quantity of them. They also have one of the best sourcing venues for 78 records, whatever that may be. But for most people, you will never make a living selling specifically 78 records, 45s, trading cards, action figures, video games. You're always going to have to supplement those sales with something else. For what we do, we sell in a ton of different categories. So it doesn't have to be any specific category. If you want to be a seller in, say, 45s or 78s once again, you're going to have to be able to get a lot of them. You're going to have to learn them. You're going to have to invest a lot of time and energy into them. Now, anything we sell or I recommend, we always make good money on it. I don't always have to sell every single unit that we buy and get my money back out of every single one. Now, if I buy a whole bunch of records, like here's a Elvis one, this one goes for about $125 to $150. I bought a whole bunch of records for $75, hundreds of them. Most people don't mess with 78s. They didn't even look through them. They just had them in a box, pulled them out of the basement. I offered them some money and they took it. End of story. That's the whole story for getting some of these records. I sell one of those records and I get all of my money back. I pay for my efforts, I pay for my time, I pay for my gas, and I make about a $30 profit. Right off the bat, bare bones minimum. You know, so it's easy to make money at selling the right things if you know how to buy them. If I'm messing with 45s, I can buy them if I want to drive to Detroit in lots of 5,000 discs fairly easily from jukebox and places like that. Long since defunct businesses that have had these in storage, or a real estate agent who walks upon these and things like that. The point is getting them at the right cost. You can make a living selling almost anything if you can get it cheap enough and routinely enough. You won't make a living, though, buying 45s one at a time in small assortments and things like that, or 45s, or baseball cards, or action figures. You need to be able to get volume. A comic shop is a perfect example of a business that will always have purchasing power. Most decent comic shops that are big enough, they sell online. They also buy local places. They may travel. I travel to pick up assortments. So my range may be much farther than a lot of other people. We also have people that pick up stuff for us. So I can have a bigger range than even if it was just me going around. I have more options to get things is the biggest point. So when we sell something, I may not even list them all. If I buy a record lot of, say, hundreds of 75 records, probably 65, 70% of them I won't even list. I'll just donate them, or in some cases, I may even trash them. You don't have to sell much to make a good amount of money off of something. With that purchase of several hundred records, I may get rid of, most of them and only have 40 or 50 to list. It only takes a very short period of time for me to list records. I can do around 30, 34 in an hour, and that includes my photo time, a front and a back, and that's all I take on 78s, 2 images. So it's not that hard of an ordeal to list them. So if I had 40, 50, even a couple hundred, I could list a couple hundred 78s in 6, 7 hours at best. At best. So there's many opportunities. Once they're up, you're going to sell some immediately. I'll sell some right away. I'll get my money back like every single time I do that. And that's not just with records. I'm using records for an example. With anything else I sell, I buy it in bulk. Sheet music, I buy hundreds of them, pounds of them sometimes. Costume jewelry, the same thing. Action figures, toy soldiers, you name it. Whatever it may be, postcards. I may buy 2, 3, 4,000 of them at a time. 5,000, 10,000 if they walk my way. Usually if I'm buying thousands of postcards, I'll pull out the ones that are going to get us $15 or better. It's usually a 20% or less percentage. There may be a 2 or 3% out of a multi-thousand one that may sell for hundreds of dollars. All I got to do is pull those out, list the better ones, and then I can turn around and resell those in lots of 1,000 myself on eBay. Usually I sell the extras for more than I paid for the entire purchase. So I'll pull out a couple hundred out of a 3,000 postcard lot. I'll turn around and sell 2,000 of them for 125 to 150 plus shipping on eBay and lots of 1,000. And then I get all my money back just from the junk, the stuff that I don't want to mess with. Now, there's money to be made in them. I just don't sell stuff usually that's less than $15 because it's not worth my time. Best thing about stuff like postcards is you can list 42, 45, maybe even 50 if you're really quick in an hour. If you're busting it, you can also scan them with the duplex scanner. In moments, a couple minutes, you can scan easily 50 postcards. So in 1 hour, you can list them and image them all at the same time. So a lot of what we sell are that way. Action figures, super easy. 5 images or so for most action figures. If you know your stuff, you can easily identify them to look them up. It does help to know what you're selling. It does help to know and have spent some time in the categories themselves. Large chunk of what we buy, we purchase to resell. I could just throw away and still make an insanely high amount of profit off of those same items. Usually, again, I blow some out, I list the rest. If it takes them years to sell every one of that purchase, I don't care. I've already got my money out. Once you've gotten your money out of the items that you purchased, it's all basically passive income. You don't really have any more effort, work, or anything else you have to do with those items other than curate them, make sure they stick there and the whole works. You've already made your money back, hopefully, if you're smart, you bought right and you list right. You made your money back day one of listing them. We usually list the best stuff first. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we may wait till Christmas time to get a little more money for them. But overall, we usually list the highest dollar value out of any purchase we get and get our money back like the first or second day. That's usually what we do. There's no sense in hanging on to a large chunk of stuff without getting money back out of it. Once the money's back out of it, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't care if I've got 1,000 of something sitting online and it takes a while to sell those items. It doesn't matter because once you've started doing this and you're selling in 50, 60, 70 different categories, each category may not be making you a ton of money. But overall, all of those category items are selling. So you may be selling a ton of stuff. They're just not always in the same category. So that's the ploy on why you have big quantity. It doesn't matter if something's been up 3 years or 1 day. They still have the same chances and opportunity of selling if they're not the hottest item out there. I don't worry if it's the hottest item. When we buy something, whatever we buy, every time we buy something, we make sure that there's at least a decent set amount of value overall in the purchase. If I can't come to a number that's at least a certain percentage point based on the amount of work I'm going to have to put into it, I'm just going to pass it by. A big issue for a lot of people is they pay too much based on quantity. Quantity does not mean money at all, for the most part. Again, it depends on the items. There's some ifs, ands, and buts related to that. But overall, the quantity of stuff I purchase isn't necessarily the biggest factor. The biggest factor is the profit margin from that specific purchase. Who cares if you buy 1,000 items or 10 items? If the value of those items is $2,000, the value is $2,000. Buying less items in some cases would do you better. Most people don't run into those types of items. Most people aren't going to run into the best items in the world every time they go out. I'm fine with taking the mid-range, the bread and butter being $25 to $75 items. I'm fine with that because at the end of the day, when all's said and done, I have pennies into each item, literally less than $1 when you equate it out over the big purchases and the whole works. So the investment into the items is nothing. The time into what we buy is as slim as we can make it. We've reduced to only listing items that are usually 5 images or less. If it takes more than that, I may not just buy it unless the value return on it is huge. If I can find a $1,000 item for $5 and I'm going to have to do 12 images, totally different story. But if it's a $25 to $75 item and I'm going to have to take 12 images and spend time and measurements and stuff, chances are I'm just not going to buy it anymore. Simplicity is one of the biggest factors. Your time is huge on doing this. The time, again, it's going to take you to look through big purchases is where a lot of people may waste and blow their investment into massive lots. If you don't know an area and you buy tens of thousands of items in that area just because it's sheer quantity, it was cheap, you're going to be spending maybe 50 times that in research time to look up everything. And again, it's not just records. It's not just trade cards. It's not just postcards or toys or sheet music or photos of militaria, uniforms or buttons or postage stamps or coins or tokens. It's all of them together. Stop thinking of it as one single item's not going to make you a fortune. If we only make $5,000 or $10,000 in, say, selling 78 records a year, that's perfectly fine with me. If I only make $5,000 selling action figures a year, profit, we're talking profit, that's fine. Because I'm selling 5,000 in records, 78 records, 5,000 in records, 15,000, 20,000 in buttons, postcards, thousands of dollars a year, trade cards, $10,000, $20,000, depending on the year. It all adds up. It all adds up. If you sell in 50 categories and you're doing 5,050 categories a year, that's a lot of money. So don't look away from items that aren't always going to make you a fortune constantly and everyone's going to sell. I don't worry about that at all anymore. It just adds to what we have up. Quantity works that way. I'm not necessarily a reseller, but I'm an antique dealer. I don't mind having inventory until the right person shows up. Don't discourage yourself from buying something or getting into something just because it's not going to make you $10,000 or $20,000 extra a week. It doesn't take a lot to advance your business. $400 extra in selling records, $500 extra in selling CDs, $300 extra selling postcards or action figures or coins or stamps. You just keep adding that up. Once you've gotten tons of different categories that you're selling in, it'll add up to a full-fledged business. Like for us, I don't look at just, say, my eBay or my Amazon business or anything else like that. We squabble together a whole bunch of different revenue streams, different selling platforms, and the whole works into one central location, and that equals our income, our revenue. It's not one specific site, one specific item, one specific category. It's all of them combined, and that's what matters, and that's what most people are missing in this industry. They don't get the gist on that. But anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
Tony? Look at Digger, Mom. Digger the dog, Digger, he goes with you when you explore. Just pull his leash and go for a walk. He's your dog for sure. What's your dog's name? Digger. Digger the dog, Digger, he goes with you when you explore. Just pull his leash and go for a walk. He's your dog for sure.
Digger the dog, when you pull his string, he walks 5 feet. From Romper Room.